dialogue, design, animation, and annotation. NPCs fill the worlds of our favorite video games in a multitude of ways. I happen to like people watching in games, and I also like virtual photography, aka the use of in-game photo modes and camera tools to frame and compose interesting shots. So at the intersection of those two things, I've been photographing NPCs as my subjects of interest for some time now. I talk to them when I can, follow them around, and I imagine what their lives might be like. I pay extra attention to their clothing, character design, behavior patterns that I think might go unnoticed by the average player. And here's what I learned. I enjoyed the combat in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order quite a bit, and I think that's about right, because it is the driving force. But when it came to the game's friendly NPCs, I felt that they were functional. That's not to say there aren't cool things to talk about, though. I'll elaborate more later, but I mentioned the combat up front because that's where Fallen Order's developers pushed themselves farthest. The enemy AI have relationships with each other, Stormtroopers will fight local wildlife, and local wildlife will have a pecking order in which they attack other creatures lower down the food chain. Here's a quote from one of the game's making-of videos.
So we've got a small ecology system, and so you'll see as you kind of play through the game, you'll have like multi-faction fights. All these creatures have relationships to one another, so that Skaz is like a prey of this brute, but then you're the bigger threat, so he's going after you right now.
This gives the player an opportunity to get creative with how they interact with flora and fauna too. There are few joys like baiting a carnivorous plant under a stormtrooper's feet. And jumping back to watch. I try to limit how much I cover enemies in these videos, but the Stormtroopers are an iconic pop culture presence, so I will highlight some of the cool details on them, beyond just them being ripped apart by nature. For one thing, their dialogue is fittingly amusing and Stormtrooper-esque, both intentionally thanks to some clever writing.
My blaster was malfunctioning earlier. Hopefully it's fixed now. It was, or you were? It was. That's what I said, right? Oh, you're making a joke. Nice one.
And unintentionally, thanks to some clever, maneuvering.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Don't let him escape! He escaped somehow.
Shifting into photo mode, take note of their armor. The black marks, the chipped paint, and the battle damage give off this impression of a very rough, real texture. The same is true of the KX unit battle droids. Note the marks here. They've clearly seen some use. While fighting a bounty hunter, I also noted the lasting damage from my lightsaber striking his arm. These little imperfections feel kind of perfect. Extending our analysis to friendly civilians, we see that these small details are also present on the droids and non-organic life NPCs. Some of the droid workers on Braca look absolutely fantastic, with these subtle imperfections in the metal. Here, have a look. You might even come across some smaller droid units who have been vandalized and spray painted over. This ties in with the ambient dialogue.
Hey, clamp it. Never know when one of those droids are listening.
You'll hear some of the other scrappers make comments about how they don't trust droids. The scrappers themselves are quite diverse, as is the range of laborious tasks you can catch them doing. Or the nice chats they have to pass the time.
Them Clone Wars were fierce. You had to be more than a few years old. Yeah, aged worse than you did, though.
Taking the camera up close, we see that they have these splotches of the same rough, rusted colors on their clothes and equipment. Note the blowtorches too. It all feels appropriately scrappy. These workers include Pantorans looking at their tablets, and Rhodians overseeing operations. And a couple of diverse human faces. The nice thing about the ambient dialogue is that it's not all in English, or basic, or whatever you want to call it. There are incidental conversations in which two NPCs will communicate through two different languages. As seen in the films and TV series. I also appreciated that Fallen Order's photo mode has a handy spotlight option if you want to examine the game's darker areas. It can illuminate some cool touches, like the fingerprint smudges on the tablets NPCs are holding. Mainly, I got some good use out of it when taking shots of workers in hard-to-reach areas. You get to see more humans and organic life on Kashyyyk, where the Wookiees live. I know I'm not the first person to say their fur textures look rough, especially compared to Battlefront 2, but I do feel this is particularly noticeable when they're running around en masse in cutscenes. If you take photo mode up close, the eyes and battle armor do a lot to counteract this strange sense of stiffness that the fur gives off. I kind of actually like the designs overall. The same was true of the partisans helping them out. One interesting thing I noticed here is that the photo mode doesn't count all NPCs as AI, because when you turn AI visibility off, some of them remain on screen. I'd guess this has something to do with the complexity of their respective animations and behaviors. Some of them are just in the background. Others star in these interesting vignettes when you enter the level for the first time, including a medic and a Wookiee tending to an injured soldier.
Stay strong until we get back.
And some partisans making elaborate battle plans. Unsurprisingly, human faces are harder to pull off compared to droids and dudes in helmets. Some looked more convincing than others. Here are a few that stood out to me. Consider this rebel who strolls the area, but is then distracted when an explosion triggers behind him.
Are you okay? I'm fine. Phew. I'm fine. Maybe a little bruised, but it's not so bad.
He rushes to help his partner up, and I love that he discards his gun as he goes. It's a great detail.
Hey, thanks. Says there's nothing here.
You know binary? You never told me that.
Just some basics I picked up in school.
Okay, so I've highlighted some small moments of incidental dialogue I liked, and this is where I'm going to critique the game a little bit. Earlier, I called Fallen Order's friendly NPCs functional, and it's largely because as I played through Kashyyyk, I started to notice a pattern. Barring a few exceptions, the ambient dialogue wasn't very specific, and at times it told me the same things I was already seeing on screen. This person needs help. I trust Saw's plans. Here's some exposition on where this character might be. Again, it's all functional, they're getting you in the mood for the coming mission. Their shuffling and awkward scowls get the job done. And narratively, it makes sense that the battle is the next thing on their minds. But what I liked about that one partisan mentioning he picked up binary is that it comes up naturally, and there's been some thought given to his exterior life outside of this mission. It's just enough to convince me this is a person. After the fight, two NPCs celebrate by remembering the reason they came here to fight in the first place. Justice for what was done to their homes. It's a little heavy-handed, but again, it feels like there's more to life for them than just this.
Our home. We're all in this together. The same cause. We're family. What happened to yours happened to mine.
We also see that one character who promises to come back to her friend being able to understand a Wookiee language, as she communicates with the Wookiee opposite her. The developers keep this consistent too. We can see the same lady letting out a Wookiee chant during the refinery battle. Of all the characters, a named NPC named Miriena actually does this best. The first time you meet her, you can tell her you found her partner's body on Zepho.
The Force showed me something on Zepho. Memories of someone named Ostar.
My partner. He distracted the Stormtroopers so I could escape with our daughter.
She worries about her daughter. Did she escape? Later, after the battle, she receives word in the affirmative.
I just received an encrypted transmission.
From Saw?
From my father. My daughter's made it to Chandrila. She's safe.
That's wonderful news.
It's the best news I've heard since coming here.
The specific mention of Chandrila helps place her story in a wider context. I appreciated whenever a character would mention even the simplest places or activities in the larger Star Wars universe. Something Grease, a key member of your ship's crew, excels at.
That's where I learned how to play Subhawk. What, are you kidding me? Lateros don't do well in the cold.
Using specific terminology like the names of fictional games, or certain characteristics different types of aliens share, makes dialogue stand out. It's not because you recognize a cool thing, but because you could recognize, oh, this character does a cool thing I'm not seeing. Cool. Things. When the dialogue is broad strokes, it reiterates what you already understand. When it's specific, it's both a fun Easter egg and a functional dose of immersion. But just side note, while we're on the topic of niche Star Wars details, can we talk about how expansive Wikipedia is? Mariana's father has his own page. Guys, this has to stop. What is this? This clinical functionality of dialogue actually makes the game a fitting early entry for what I'm considering Volume 2 of this NPC series. I've linked a compilation of Volume 1 in the description below. From Braca to Kashyyyk, these NPCs were a reminder to me that a lot of the things I've started to take for granted on this project, such as continuity between which NPCs live and work where, cycling different tasks throughout the course of a game, or NPCs who comment on certain player choices, are an anomaly. These are dev teams going above and beyond, and that's what makes them stand out. After the Kashyyyk refinery battle, I came back to where I'd landed my ship and looked around to explore the before versus after. There's some fun new vignettes like Wookiees and battle helmets, but very few of the vignettes are follow-ups on what I'd seen the last time I was here. One or two character models do reappear in the same positions, and they're now joined by more Wookiees because we've rescued them, but a lot of the distinguishable human faces have just vanished. The lady who promised to come back to her injured friend, or that guy who helped his friend walk off that explosion, got lost at some point during the scuffle. From a cutscene, I know that the lady who believed in Saw's plan saw it through to the end though.
Kashyyyk is not yet lost!
As did her supervisor. That was cool. I don't know. Maybe it's a blessing most of them left this location, because returning here for a different quest shows you that the Inquisitors eliminated a lot of the partisans. Luckily, Mariana is safe, and she's been doing some thinking.
Not all. Mari is staying behind with Choisik and Tarful. Some of our troops went with them.
And you?
My child already lost one parent. I can't stay. But myself and the others will find a new way to serve the cause.
Be safe, Mariana.
NPCs with interior thoughts and exterior motivations. I love it. I know the sequel, Jedi Survivor, features a home base of sorts, so I'm eager to see if we see more of this kind of thing. At one point in the game, Cal is forced to fight in an arena battle, and some of my favorite findings are actually here. Using photo mode, you can see that the giant 3D looking hologram of the owner is actually flat. 2D. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Turning our attention to the audience, we can see that there are a number of low polygon models up in the stands, but I genuinely appreciate a few of the details here. For a bunch of models that no one is meant to see, they have a surprisingly diverse makeup, and all of their costumes are very appropriately Star Wars too. It's impressive. While these shots won't blow anyone away, they did bring a smile to my face. So a bit of context before this next section. Throughout the game, your character Cal has numerous flashbacks to his training with Master Jaro Tapal. Tapal looks fantastic with a unique design and a confident, refined stance. However, all of your sessions with him except for the last take place one-on-one. When you reach the last flashback though, you play a short prelude to Cal rendezvousing with his master, and you get to meet a few friendly clone troopers on the way. I know I've praised the Stormtroopers, but these clones were some of my favorite NPCs in the whole game. Close up, their battle damage looks even more detailed than their future counterparts, with scorch marks, bullet-shaped dots, and dark swaths of dirt. Here's a look. but none of it is overpowering. From a glance, their iconic white armor still shines through. I'm led to wonder if the detailing on them is more fleshed out because you spend slow, intimate downtime with them, whereas with Stormtroopers, you're always jumping around in the heat of battle. Other than photo mode, there's little reason to look close. When you talk to the clones, they even interact with young Cal in endearing ways.
Sounds good. On your way to training?
Always.
All right then. I'll see you later. You're in a rush.
Master T'Pol's called me for training.
You got this, kid.
There's clearly a great relationship here, and it's solidified further when one of them shows up to help out during your training.
Cheap shot, Commander.
The thing is, Star Wars fans, this is the last flashback, and you know where this is going. Under Order 66, the clones are forced to turn their guns on the Jedi, and these little redeeming moments with them beforehand are meant to make you feel the weight of that betrayal. But I couldn't help but wonder if I felt so moved by them high-fiving Cal and giving him little nudges, because I've spent a lot of time watching Clone Wars. Are these few seconds of kindness enough to twist the knife in a meaningful way for a more general audience? I don't think they are, but I get the sense that this concern wasn't a priority for Fallen Order. The clones only show up for the Order 66 flashback, rather than being built up and seeded in throughout the others. And I think here we see an interesting conundrum in game development. If they had been included in the earlier scenes, it would have slowed the gameplay down and ruined the momentum the devs were going for. And since they don't show up until this last scene, we lose a small bit of narrative weight. It's a small trade-off, and if I'm the first person to point this out, then honestly, they made the right call. Next, a few notes on the major NPCs. Grease was easily my favorite, and I want to highlight just how many ways in which the animators had fun animating his hands. He's an extremely expressive character, even when it comes to incidental dialogue.
Yeah, it's true. I do look young for my age.
Here's us revisiting the landing pad on Kashyyyk one more time. For context, at the end of the game, the NPCs from here are completely gone.
You know, you try to keep a place clean, and then you guys bring me here. Place smells like damp Wookiee fur.
Speaking of hands, I also noticed that you can see the veins in the Wanderer's hands on Dathomir, which was chilling. It's not a detail I'm used to seeing often. More on that in a bit. Saw Gerrera and Tarful from the movies also make appearances, and with Saw, we find another interesting narrative conundrum. It's no secret that Lucasfilm Story Group works extremely closely with anyone who's making a Star Wars property, to ensure they get the details and continuity correct.
We are mostly pulling from reference from Clone Wars and Rebels.
If you guys do go with the Rodian, which is totally fine, if you could do the orange skin Rodian rather than the green skin.
Saw has a busy schedule, so he's only in the game for the first Kashyyyk mission, and this makes Mari Kosan, who works with him, a real MVP. Since Mari is an original character created for Fallen Order, she never has to ditch the Wookiees. The game even frames her dedication to holding down the fort as an extremely heroic and altruistic quality, which it is. And her backstory, which reveals that she's good at scouting because she used to be a topographer before joining the rebellion, is another one of those smart, specific details I craved more of from the game.
How'd you become a guerrilla fighter?
I used to be a topographer. Traveled to rule planets, mapping their natural formations.
Sounds exciting.
It was my dream job. Then the Republic became the Empire. The poor became indentured servants. I couldn't sit back and watch it happen, so I joined the cause.
I don't have much to say about the flora and fauna, because Fallen Order directly encourages you to pay attention to them anyway, with detailed codex entries about the various types of wildlife. But they look good. I especially like the little lizards, the Tsar on Bogano, and their massive counterpart, the Beenog, which is considered a guardian of the planet.
That creature seems so at home here. Protector of Bogano. I thought that was you.
It's just this giant, docile creature that's oddly satisfying to watch. Our giant friend even rolls over. On Kashyyyk, I was also startled to encounter these mandrill-like creatures. They're called the Tak, and they're actually brought over from 2017's Star Wars Battlefront 2, where they could be seen wandering Kashyyyk. Here's the comparison. spoiler warning for the rest of this. Our final NPCs of Fallen Order only appear towards the end, so this is a good place to stop or skip. Ready? So the game introduces an ancient alien species called the Zepho, who you only see in a late-game vision.
Dogma blinded us to the path of balance, and gradually we allowed our pride to corrupt us.
They turn their heads towards you in this cold and haunting way. They're shrouded in fog for the most part, but I was able to get some interesting close-ups of their faces and jewelry. This vision isn't the first you see them, though. Their bodies also appear like casts, frozen in ash on Dathomir, their faces screaming, and hands reached helplessly towards the heavens, evoke a terrifying image reminiscent of the aftermath of Mount Vesuvius's eruption.
Find something?
Our main nemesis throughout the game are the Inquisitors. The second sister looks great in cutscenes, but in gameplay, she gives some additional credence to my theory about friendly NPCs having slightly more detail than enemies. Although you can get some good action shots in fights, it's a bit harder to find good angles on their faces. This is especially true of the final boss, Darth Vader himself. You spend the entire fight running from him, but if you pull back on photo mode, you can find his in-game model looking surprisingly angular. Going by the polished renders on Red Hot CG's website, what is likely happening here is that Vader's character model is getting swapped around depending on his proximity to the player. To close things out, it took me a while to understand Fallen Order's photo mode. I struggled with the depth of field options at first because there's this giant blue wall indicating the focus distance, but hitting right and left on the D-pad moves it in large fixed increments. When I noticed you can use the triggers to slowly slide it though, it grew on me. It actually works quite well. Likewise, I found the spotlight feature to be overkill at first, but it's best placed slightly off frame, so that it just provides a nice highlight as opposed to a bright ball of overexposure. I'll be honest, I didn't particularly love photographing NPCs in this game, but I did come away with a deep appreciation for the care that went into little touches on their clothing, their animation, the props they hold and throw around. I also want to take a second to appreciate the reverb effect that plays when you interrupt an enemy bark with photo mode.
Do not let him.
It's a subtle UX/UI thing, but one worth noting. When a character is mid-sentence, it smooths over the transition to complete photo mode silence with an elegant effect. One that echoes and evokes a sensation of using the Force to stop time. The team at Respawn has created the exact kind of atmosphere I would look for in a Star Wars game, but there's also massive credit due to the external partners who helped them achieve it. Take Red Hot CG, who modeled a lot of the NPCs we've just covered, including Vader himself, multiple types of Stormtroopers, and the Wookiees' battle helmets. On their website, you can see a lot of the details on these models up close. They even have renders of those veined hands I got so fixated on. Also of note is Airship Interactive. They modeled a lot of the hair and facial hair on major NPCs, including Seer, both present day and in flashback, Grease, Marin, and Master Jaro Tapal. Here's some comparisons. Airship has done hairstyles for Star Wars before too. They did the hair on Battlefront 2, and their website credits a lot of the same artists between the two projects. I liked the NPC designs here overall. There were moments of subtle brilliance. And although I wish the worlds were more populated and wanted more from the dialogue, I'm excited to see how Respawn pushes on with Survivor. Hey, thanks so much for watching that. This video is actually part of a series in which I look at NPCs in even more games that pique my interest. I also make video essays about games, movies, and all that good stuff. So if you like my work, consider subscribing. Last but not least, I've included links to the social media pages where I post my photos, down below in the description. Juxtaposed with my photos, you might find some short stories I've come up with about the various NPCs I've looked at. Until next time, remember that every stranger on the street's got a story, and every story can only get stranger.